the Cold War. It wasn't a war with bombs and bullets, at least not directly. It was a clash of ideas, a global standoff between two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. From 1947 to 1991, fear and suspicion gripped the world. The threat of nuclear annihilation loomed large, casting a long shadow over everyday life. Imagine a world split in two. On one side, the United States and its allies, champions of democracy and capitalism. On the other, the Soviet Union and its satellite states, promoting communism. This global divide shaped politics, economics, and culture for nearly half a century. The Cold War was a time of high tension, but it was also a time of remarkable technological advancement. It pushed both sides to innovate, leading to breakthroughs in space exploration, weaponry, and even consumer goods. To understand the Cold War, we need to rewind to the aftermath of World War II. The US and the Soviet Union, once allies against Nazi Germany, emerged as the world's two dominant powers. But their wartime alliance was built on shaky ground, their ideologies fundamentally opposed. The US, a capitalist democracy, championed individual freedom and a free market economy. The Soviet Union, under Stalin's iron fist, promoted communism, advocating for a classless society with state control over the means of production. These fundamental differences, simmering beneath the surface, soon erupted into open hostility. Mistrust ran deep. The US, horrified by Stalin's brutality, saw the Soviet Union as an expansionist threat. The Soviets, suspicious of the West's capitalist ambitions, felt threatened by America's atomic monopoly. This atmosphere of suspicion and fear laid the foundation for the Cold War. As the Cold War took hold, Europe became a chessboard for the two superpowers. In 1946, Winston Churchill famously declared that an Iron Curtain had descended across Europe, dividing East from West. On one side, Western Europe, aligned with the US and embracing democracy and capitalism. On the other, Eastern Europe, under Soviet control and forced into communism. Germany, the epicenter of the war's devastation, became a microcosm of this division. Berlin, the former capital, was physically split in two, a tangible symbol of the ideological chasm separating East and West. The division of Europe had profound consequences. Millions found themselves trapped behind the Iron Curtain, their freedoms curtailed, their lives controlled by communist regimes. The Cold War had reshaped the political landscape of Europe, leaving a legacy of division and distrust that would take decades to overcome. The Cold War was more than just a geopolitical struggle. It was a battle of ideas. At its core was the clash between capitalism and communism, two fundamentally different visions for society. The US championed capitalism, promoting individual freedom, free markets, and democratic values. It sought to contain the spread of communism, fearing it would undermine democracy and threaten the American way of life. The Soviet Union, in turn, promoted communism, advocating for a classless society, state control of the economy, and the abolition of private property. It sought to spread its ideology, seeing it as a path to global equality and liberation from capitalist exploitation. Section 5: Flashpoints, crises that almost ended the world. The Cold War was a time of constant tension, punctuated by moments of acute crisis that brought the world to the brink of nuclear war. The ideological battle between the United States and the Soviet Union created an atmosphere of mutual distrust and fear, where any misstep could lead to catastrophic consequences. These flashpoints exposed the fragility of peace and the ever-present danger of miscalculation. Each crisis was a stark reminder of how close humanity came to annihilation and how delicate the balance of power truly was. One such crisis was the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, a pivotal moment in history that showcased the perilous nature of the Cold War. The Soviet Union, seeking to bolster its defenses and counter American nuclear superiority, deployed nuclear missiles to Cuba, just 90 miles from US shores. This bold move was a direct challenge to the United States and escalated tensions to unprecedented levels. This sparked a tense 13-day standoff between President John F. Kennedy and Premier Nikita Khrushchev, with the world holding its breath as the two superpowers teetered on the precipice of nuclear war. The fate of millions hung in the balance during this critical period. Through tense negotiations and back-channel diplomacy, disaster was averted. The importance of communication and diplomacy was never more evident than during these crucial days. the Soviet Union agreed to remove the missiles from Cuba, a decision that helped to de-escalate the situation and bring the world back from the brink of disaster. In return, the US pledged not to invade the island, a promise that was crucial in securing a peaceful resolution to the crisis. The Cuban Missile Crisis served as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of nuclear war and the urgent need for restraint. It underscored the importance of diplomacy, communication, and the willingness to compromise in the face of potential annihilation. Section 6. Living on the Edge. Life under the Shadow of War. The Cold War wasn't just a conflict between governments, it permeated every aspect of life, from politics and economics to culture and everyday interactions. It was a period marked by intense rivalry and suspicion, where every action was scrutinized and every word could be a potential threat. For those living on both sides of the Iron Curtain, the Cold War was a constant presence, shaping their hopes, fears, and daily realities. Families went about their daily routines, but always with an underlying tension, a sense of living on the edge. In the West, the fear of communism was palpable. It wasn't just a distant threat, it was something that could infiltrate communities, schools, and even homes. Anti-communist sentiment ran high, fueled by propaganda and the very real threat posed by Soviet espionage and subversion. The media played a significant role in stoking these fears, with newsreels and posters depicting the Soviet Union as an ever-present danger. The US government implemented loyalty oaths and blacklists, while McCarthyism created an atmosphere of fear and suspicion, ensnaring many innocent people in its web. Careers were destroyed, and lives were upended as accusations flew and paranoia took hold. Life in the Soviet bloc was equally fraught. Citizens lived under the watchful eyes of the state, where any deviation from the norm could result in severe consequences. Citizens lived under repressive regimes, their freedoms curtailed, their movements monitored, their access to information controlled. The state maintained a tight grip on every aspect of life, from the media to personal interactions. Dissent was met with swift and brutal repression, as the Soviet Union sought to maintain its grip on power. Protests were quickly quashed, and dissidents were often arrested, silenced, or worse. The shadow of war loomed large, affecting every facet of life. Section 7. The Thaw Cracks in the Iron Curtain. This period marked a significant shift in the dynamics of the Cold War, as the rigid divisions between East and West began to show signs of softening. By the 1970s, the Cold War's rigid bipolarity began to show signs of thawing. The era of détente brought a cautious relaxation of tensions, as both superpowers recognized the unsustainable nature of their perpetual standoff. The death of Stalin in 1953 and the rise of Khrushchev ushered in a period of de-Stalinization, easing some of the Soviet Union's harshest policies. Khrushchev's secret speech denouncing Stalin's cult of personality was a pivotal moment, signaling a shift towards a slightly more open and less repressive regime. A series of arms control agreements, such as the SALT treaties, aimed to limit the proliferation of nuclear weapons, offering a glimmer of hope for a more stable world. These treaties were significant steps towards reducing the risk of nuclear confrontation, reflecting a mutual desire to avoid catastrophic conflict. The Helsinki Accords, signed in 1975, recognized the inviolability of European borders and promoted human rights, further easing tensions between East and West. This landmark agreement was a testament to the possibility of cooperation and dialogue, even amidst deep-seated ideological differences. Despite these positive developments, the Cold War continued to simmer. The underlying ideological conflict between capitalism and communism remained unresolved, and mutual suspicion persisted. Proxy wars raged in Vietnam, Afghanistan, and elsewhere, as the two superpowers vied for influence in the developing world. These conflicts were brutal and devastating, often leaving lasting scars on the nations involved. The arms race continued unabated, with both sides pouring vast resources into developing ever more sophisticated and deadly weapon systems. The relentless pursuit of military superiority underscored the ongoing tension and the ever-present threat of a catastrophic escalation. Section 8. A New World Order: The Collapse of Communism. The 1980s witnessed a dramatic acceleration of history. The election of Mikhail Gorbachev as Soviet leader in 1985 ushered in an era of unprecedented reform. Gorbachev's policies of glasnost, or openness, and perestroika, or restructuring, aimed to address the Soviet Union's deep-seated economic and political problems. However, these reforms proved to be a catalyst for change far beyond what Gorbachev had anticipated. The Berlin Wall, that potent symbol of Cold War division, fell in 1989 as pro-democracy demonstrations swept across Eastern Europe. One by one, communist regimes crumbled, their grip on power loosened by popular uprisings and the Soviet Union's waning ability to prop them up. In 1991, the Soviet Union itself dissolved, marking the end of the Cold War and ushering in a new world order. Section 9. The legacy of the Cold War echoes in the 21st century. The Cold War may be over, but its legacy continues to shape the world we live in today. The geopolitical map drawn during the Cold War still influences international relations, albeit in a more multipolar world. The threat of nuclear war may have receded, but the legacy of the nuclear arms race remains. The proliferation of nuclear weapons to more countries poses a constant challenge to global security, while the specter of nuclear terrorism remains a chilling possibility. Moreover, the ideological battle between democracy and authoritarianism, which lay at the heart of the Cold War, continues to rage in different forms. The Cold War's legacy serves as a reminder of the importance of diplomacy, the need for international cooperation, and the fragility of peace in a world still grappling with the ghosts of the past.